episode 6, The Norseman. I really enjoyed this episode because not only did we get another tie to Alex's actual life with his niece coming into play, but we got a pretty interesting case that had some pretty weird ups and downs. Like, it had a connection to Alex's friend. It ended up, of course, being tied to him directly with his niece. And then even the ending was pretty crazy because it led to a fight with Mr. Johnson. So this whole case had just a bunch of crazy stuff happening. We had like an insane shootout where the guy was a full-on Terminator. Like, I honestly thought of the Terminator during that scene. And I also thought, like, every villain in any TV show can survive. If they're just mad and they walk towards the cops, they never get killed. Like, that never happens unless it's like the end of the episode and it's like the dramatic thing where they go out guns blazing. But if it's in the middle, they always survive. It's like all the cops are like, oh crap, we gotta get out of here. And it's one guy with a handgun just walking towards them. But I did enjoy this episode. I wanted to make sure, because obviously I'm basically a week behind with this review because of all my crazy convention stuff, so it's taking me forever to catch up. But I definitely wanted to make sure I uploaded this before the next episode came out. Because this is actually a fairly important episode, because not only did it definitely brought in more ties with Alex's buddy, but it also had Mr. Johnson actually meeting this FBI agent, and he basically confronted her. I thought he was going to kind of play it coy and talk to her and just do his random thing. And then it was pretty much like, oh, you're new in town, maybe one other sentence, and then it's like, I know you're protected, but you're not as protected as you think you are. And she was also incredibly calm, which I thought that also surprised me. Because it's like this random guy, and of course she knows she's looking into something weird, but I'd still be like, okay, they found me, and I guess, them finding her, I guess, isn't that big of a deal. You know something huge is happening, so someone finding you probably isn't that big of a deal. But I'd still find that to be a pretty big deal, as far as someone just being like, you're not as protected as you think. That's basically a death threat coming from this super secret weird organization that's bringing in, like, Black Ops type people, basically, and even they aren't surviving whatever is going on. And I'm an FBI agent. I know she's an FBI agent, but still, that's very different than going to war and doing, like, some of the stuff Alex has done. So I'd be freaking out in my little FBI boots. But she was super calm, and it was actually really cool of her to be, like, so calm. And she sipped her drink, and it was like nothing. Like, okay, I'm pretty protective, but I can take care of myself once my protection runs out, is basically how that back and forth went. So that was a really cool little scene. It made me like her even more, because I like her character. She, of course, not just because she's, kind of helped move a certain side plot along, but I kind of like her personality. We didn't get too much of it until this actual scene, but her personality was clear that she was driven to figure out what the heck is going on in these weird cases where these guys are disappearing. So I enjoyed her character to begin with, because it's like she's looking into this really crazy, kind of off the books type stuff as is. So it just makes me like her because she's already invested in something really dangerous and crazy. And then this just made her even cooler, where she's like, oh, we're playing this little game, and I want to step up if you step to me, and that's what she did. So I was like, that makes me like her even more. So that was really cool. Alex was not exactly breaking the rules. He did some interesting stuff early on in the episode, like when he goes in the bathroom. And that was pretty interesting. He doesn't technically break any rules, and he technically doesn't even say that much. Even when he did that, basically all he said was the same thing he was saying before, which I thought was kind of funny. I was like, oh, he didn't exactly say anything. All he really said was, even when his buddy asked him about Occam, like, he had the name of the hotel. He was like, oh, that's just a client. I'm like, why do you do all this extra stuff, just to say the same thing, like, in, like, slightly more detail, where he makes the lie, a little bit better, where it's like, oh, it's just a client, and that's it. Like, I thought that was kind of weird that he'd even bothered doing all that stuff, because they didn't actually write anything special in there. So I was like, that was kind of weird that he did that little thing where he's like, messing with the earpiece and turned on the dryers. And ultimately he was just like, look, I'm fine. Occam's just a client. I was like, that's all he ever says. Like, how is that any different and worth, being all secretive about? Unless there's something in those couple of sentences I completely missed or just don't remember. But I was like, that was weird that that happened because he didn't say anything special as far as I was concerned. He just gave a little bit more detail about how it was too dangerous to talk about. So I was like, whatever. Still liked it because he's kind of messing around. He's getting a little dangerous. So they, kind of just hinted at something minor in this one. But that can definitely expand if things get crazier. He might start actually breaking some rules or getting like a little bit too close to where he ends up in conflict with Mr. Johnson. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I think that'd actually be pretty sweet. But the case was fun, and like I said, it ties into his buddy. So he's looking for a guy. He thinks he found the guy like halfway through the episode, and it's like, who the heck is this guy? And when that first happened, I was like, oh, he just hired some random dude, like just somebody else who didn't have any money or whatever. He hired him to be like a decoy. And then we find out, no, this guy actually is the murderer, but so was the other guy. And then he got killed by this new guy because they were working as a team. And he felt the second guy, or like, the guy in this episode felt betrayed a little bit. And so he killed the other dude and sent a picture of his bones. And I was just like, what in the world? This is insane. So it was kind of crazy. Like, it was a little bit of a twist, and then it got an even crazier twist where it was like he was never wrong to begin with. It was always that guy, or it was these two guys, but he was still technically right. It was that other dude. And then that guy got killed because this new guy felt betrayed because he was kind of backing out of his deal with, the Norse gods and all that stuff. And I was just like, okay, that's insane. So he killed that guy and then, did the carvings and stuff and sent this picture. And it was like, this guy is effing nuts. And it was a creepy looking dude too, because this guy is super freaking tall. He was insanely tall. And I think he was taller than everyone in this episode. So he's just a super tall guy. He's got like the weird makeup on and stuff with the black around his eyes. And he had like the little... I was wondering why he had like the weird facial makeup. And, they keep it on until the very end when he's with Alex's niece. And then he wipes all that off and he has even more tattoos. And I was like, that's even more insane. Okay, somehow he got even crazier after all that stuff he did with the crazy shootout and having an actual axe when he fought against Alex. I was like, that's freaking nuts. They fall off balconies, all sorts of crap. He had a bulletproof vest on. Like, he was an insanely prepared serial killer. And it was really weird watching, them go through dealing with this character, because he seriously was kind of like a Terminator type character, or with this being sort of the Halloween episode, he really was almost like a horror movie villain, where he just kept surviving everything. He fell over the balcony. He got out before Alex did, like it was nothing. He's taken off. He gets shot twice. He's prepared with a bulletproof vest. Nothing, none of it was supernatural, but it was definitely crazy. Like, he keeps surviving all this crazy stuff. He had, like, it was kind of gross to me, but when he had the little lockpick for the handcuffs and he, kind of gets that out, I'm like, this is just like a prepared supervillain almost. Kills the one cop, stabs him in the neck, he just gets the gun, and he's just, firing away on all the cops. Nobody's able to escape. He gets the key to the armory. He's tossing smoke grenades at people. All sorts of insanity, and he wants revenge, on Alex's buddy. But he lets that go. He ends up with Alex's niece, which... that was another thing that was really weird. Like, the first thing with Alex, when he didn't really say much, I was like, alright, that was weird. But the thing where the guy found Alex's niece at Alex's house, that didn't even remotely make any sense to me, because I don't know why any of Alex's information would actually be on there. Because it's not like he's her legal guardian or she's living with him. She just got into town like a day or two before. And I understand, like, even if he was her emergency contact, maybe that's the case, because I really don't know police reports and stuff. But I wouldn't think that they'd be like, here's, her emergency contact, or whoever is closest to the precinct. Like, okay, it's Alex Kane. I wouldn't think it would have, like, his number and his address and all that type of information. But I could easily be wrong. Like I said, I have no idea. I don't know how police reports work and what information they put for, family members and stuff like that. But I thought that was really weird. But that's just me. I thought that didn't make sense. But like I said, that's just me, because I never knew that they put all that extra information, which I kind of feel like they don't. But at the same time, I feel like the writers of the show would have done their research on that. So maybe they do. And that's just a really weird thing I've never heard of before. But it surprised me. I was like, okay, I don't know how he could grab her file, and then it's like, oh, this is where her uncle lives. That didn't really, make sense to me at the time. And it still kind of doesn't because I don't know all the facts, and I'm just sticking with my thing where it's like, it's weird that they just have all that extra information. But he finds her, and it gets pretty crazy after that. We have a scene where Alex, not only does he like get caught in this trap and he's freaking out, then they cut to commercial, of course. I thought his leg was going to be broken and he'd really be struggling to get out, but comes in at the nick of time, has a crazy fight scene. He gets knocked down because this guy's like a towering behemoth with an axe. So then it's like he and his niece are about to get killed. And then here comes Mr. Johnson with the third thing that didn't make sense to me because I was trying to figure it out. But for whatever reason, Alex technically won this game, which I didn't think really made sense because they've done it before where it's like with the kid in the last episode, they're like, he can't go to prison because the players don't consider that safe, or the gamblers don't consider that to be safe. And I'm like, well, if they can have that sort of stipulation and get super specific like that, how is him still, being in the middle of this fight count as him stopping the guy? Like, that didn't make sense to me either. But either way, that led to Alex getting his niece out of there. They take off, and we get yet another cool fight scene with Mr. Johnson. And this time, we get him with, this little stick, and it's almost like a little short sword for him. And they're just going back and forth, and he's just, whipping this guy in the head and junk, and he's, deflected, hit him in the back of the knee, all sorts of crazy stuff, and it's just really fun to watch, and it was just fun to watch. It was a cool fight, and I didn't expect it. I'm like, okay, I like the fact that they're showing us Mr. Johnson in action, I think is really cool, because it kind of makes it seem like they're leading up to some more pretty crazy things, like some really big stuff, because it's like, okay, he fought his friend, we got a tiny bit of history back then, we got a little bit in this episode where they actually talk about him having played before, or him having been a player, which I thought was pretty interesting, so that kind of talks a tiny bit about how the game goes, where it's like, okay, you go from being the player to actually becoming the boss, if you choose to do that. So that was pretty interesting. I kind of thought maybe he just came in as, the pit boss. I hadn't even really thought about it because it's a weird, crazy, super secret game. So I hadn't even thought about how people get really hired in, because they showed us the player, and I never thought, oh, the player can become the pit boss. That just never even occurred to me as a thought, because I'm just thinking about all the craziness, all the crazy stuff happening in the show. So we got that tiny bit of info on him, and then we got another really awesome fight at the end. And the way it ended really surprised me, because I had no idea he was going to kill the guy. And so, when he came in, I didn't think he'd kill him the way that he did, because when he came in and he was like, I'm the guy that cleans up all the messes, I was like, okay, so he's here to kill this guy. He's not going to stop him and, let the cops come get him. He's going to take this guy down. But the way he did it, I thought, like, oh, so he's not going to kill the guy, because I thought for sure he wrapped the cloth around the guy's neck and had him on the thing. I was like, oh, he's just going to choke him out, because he was just pulling it. And I was like, oh, he's going to choke him out and, leave him. And then he let go a little, and then he just snaps his neck, and he's just hanging there with a broken neck. I was like, holy crap, he actually killed this guy. And mostly it was just how he did it that surprised me, because like I said, I thought for sure, I was like, oh, he's just choking him, and he's going to leave him hanging there for the cops to get him. And then he snaps his neck, and then even crazier, for some reason, I still don't understand this. This is another thing that didn't make sense to me. I do not understand whatsoever why he chopped his head and hands off, because he was already dead. It doesn't really do much else. It could have just been like some random person that he tried to kidnap, got the upper hand on him, and that's all there is to it. And then instead he kind of got a weird sort of revenge on him after he killed him, and then he chopped his head and hands off. And I was just like, this is really weird. Like, why did he bother doing all that extra stuff? It was really crazy to me. But I certainly enjoyed this episode. It was really fun. We got like a little moment between Alex and Mr. Johnson where he does give him the number. Not much really came out of that, aside from the fact that we do find out that Jenny basically got on a plane in Miami, and then so poof, they could be anywhere now. So that was kind of just like, oh, here's a little lead that doesn't go anywhere because they could be anywhere on Earth, and even Mr. Johnson was like, yeah, they could be, and that was kind of it because there's nowhere to go from there. It was like I tracked them to this airport, and they got on a plane somewhere. So you would think they'd be able to track which plane they got on because it's an airport. There's like 100 billion cameras in there, but it was basically like, oh, they went inside the airport, and then there's nothing else we could do. There's a plane somewhere to somewhere. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't know what the next lead could even possibly be, really, unless it came from Cassandra, which I think would be really awesome because I want to figure this out. I want to know, how come she doesn't just tell Alex like, oh, we used to work together, and maybe it's a part of the game that she's not allowed to tell him or something because they have obviously insane rules. It's an insane game, but I want to know. I want to see just how Alex is going to react when he finds out Cassandra knew Jenny. Because even aside from whatever Mr. Johnson's going to end up saying, I just want to see that interaction. Like, all this time, you knew Jenny, and even when I first came in, you had to have known about me because we were married, even when she was, doing that. So, it's just interesting. I want to see that interaction sooner rather than later. So, hopefully that comes up in the next couple of episodes somewhere, but I'm going to have to get a new lead somehow, and I don't know if it's going to come from a mission or what, but she's on an airplane with some guy who, to me, from the back of the head, it looked like the guy from the first episode. So I think he's not actually dead. He wasn't actually killed off in that bomb strike, which is something I'd hoped for back then, because technically that guy's still involved with all the weirdness of whatever happened with Jenny and her being kidnapped and stuff. So he's still a bad guy, and I still wanted Alex to get that ultimate revenge, even though now he knows that Jenny isn't dead. It's not the same level of revenge where it's like, this is the guy that killed my wife, but he can still easily get answers if he can find him, before he finds Jenny. So I think it's going to end up being that guy, and we'll have that sort of rivalry come back instead of him having been killed off, in a bomb strike off screen, which I thought kind of sucked. I was like, oh, that blows, because he's not going to get revenge, and then here comes the twist, she's totally not dead, so he might not be either. I don't know, but I enjoyed this episode, of course. I want to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and I want to know what you guys thought about the villain for this week, because normally it's just like, it's a mission that happens, but this episode felt like that guy was actually a villain. Like, this seemed like it was a villain for like a hero or something like that, because seemingly he just had all these different skills, the bulletproof vest stuff, taking on all the cops at the police station, the fact that he just had an axe, which was insane. He's just fighting with an axe. It was crazy. So he's just like this really tough character that seriously was like a horror movie villain. He was just really powerful. He was so powerful against everyone that he went up against until the very end, when he had to fight Mr. Johnson, and he, pulled out his epic martial arts skills and just destroyed him, which is probably going to happen anytime someone goes up against Mr. Johnson. Until that doesn't happen, and then that'll be an epic episode. But for now, he was an insane villain that ultimately got defeated by basically the most powerful person on the show, who's just like oddly, tough and can just beat anybody, but he's reached the level where he doesn't have to use his hands too often anymore. So obviously it's going to be really cool when we get to see that happen. But I liked him as a villain. He really was like a villain, and everyone else was just like, oh, these are bad guys. He was like an actual villain from a movie to me. But I want to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.